Welcome to Can't Recommend Enough. Today's guest is Michael Maxwell of the Jack of All Nerds show. And we're talking about action movies, but specifically we're talking about henchmen in action movies and just how ridiculous they are. Also, we'll be discussing video game to movie adaptations, some Tom Cruise films, and a little bit later in the show, Highlander, and just how rad we think it is. Hopefully you feel the same way, and if you don't, hopefully we can school you on its awesomeness. And if not, we tried. Sorry. Anyway, enjoy it. And at the end as well, we got some really cool historical fun facts. Because Michael Maxwell, being the jack of all nerds, just has a lot of knowledge. Anyway, let's have some fun. So I was thinking, like, what can, I'm a huge movie nerd. Like, love movies, and I see that's your big thing too. Mm-hmm. So we got that covered. But I also want to pick your brain on a bunch of other stuff too.
Okay.
Because you guys have some really cool segments, like how to survive an action movie. And these are things that I think about. But I think a really good template for that is, have you ever seen Last Action Hero?
I have, yes.
Danny Manigan is picking apart the movie the whole time. And it was that moment, remember, when he realizes that, they're in that chicken match, and he's like, okay, I'm on this, what was it, like a little girl's bike, and he's gonna play chicken with these bad guys, the henchmen.
Yeah, until he realizes he's the sidekick.
Yes,
the comic relief or whatever. Yeah,
the comic relief. Yeah, like not the good sidekick, but he's the comic relief sidekick who won't last. So, all right. Knowing that there is a movie out there that kind of breaks it down, like, talk a little bit about, like, what was your thinking on trying to survive an action movie? Like, where did that come from?
Okay. Yeah. Well, so the whole idea behind that is that because I watch so many movies and we review movies, that it was like a natural thing. Like, as part of our reviews, we were constantly just stating like what they should have done or what doesn't make sense. It's one of those things where, I don't know if you watch an action movie and then you try to apply like real life logic to it, which doesn't
make sense.
Doesn't hold water in an action
Especially
movie.
John Woo movies. There's no reloading.
Yeah, never. So that was kind of the thought process behind it. It was like, all right, well, we see these common tropes in all these action movies. So what if we explain like that's how a hench person, because it's always henchmen getting killed off for no reason whatsoever. So we're like, what if we give a coaching lesson for hench people on what they need to do to not get killed off by these, named characters. So that was kind of the idea behind the video series.
Did you approach it as like, if there's a call for henchmen, right? So a henchman for hire reads an ad in a newspaper, like looking for a henchman. And they answer this ad in the paper. They go for the interview for the henchman. And they're like, okay, so here's what could happen, right? Like, you're a henchman, so already you're pretty expendable. This is the things that you need to expect, and this is how you can survive them. Like, if that was the layout, what would you tell a henchman? Like, you're the bad guy, you're the big boss or whatever. What are the ways to survive being a henchman?
Well, I think
and how would you break it to them in a way that made them feel better about possibly being dead?
I don't know that there's any way to do that. I feel like most hench people in action movies must be just motivated purely on money alone, because they do some of the dumbest things that no like paid mercenary, I feel like, would do in those circumstances. Like, you've just watched a hero mow down everybody you've worked with without so much as getting a scratch, and you have the confidence to come at them with a knife or something? No.
I love the guys that, like, especially it's the trope for the martial arts movies where they take turns fighting the guy.
Yeah.
I would just gang up. Like, if I see one guy attack, I'm in there attacking with him. I think we stand in numbers rather than solo waiting to attack. Like, all right, I'm just going to wait my turn. But he just totally destroyed those 5 guys before me.
Oh, for sure.
I think I got a shot.
Yeah, hands down. If in action movies, if all the hench people just jumped on the hero at one time, it'd be over. It'd be done and over with.
Well, maybe unless he was Neo, because Neo fought a lot of dudes.
That is
like
true.
A lot of Agent Smiths at once and did a pretty comparable job. Right?
That is true. That is true.
Yeah.
I guess,
But no, go on.
I was just going to say, I guess then in that case, it depends on the action movie setting that you're working with.
So we're talking, are we talking like 80s and 90s action movies?
Yeah, that was where the most inspiration came from, was pretty much your 80s, 90s action films. I mean, there's still some more modern stuff that we reference, like the Transporter films are a good example. And a good example of what you were just talking about. There's multiple scenes in those movies where Statham is just taking on a bunch of guys who are waiting around to attack him. Like they're not rushing him. They're just like, wait for it. So,
and how many? It's been a while since I've seen the Transporter, but like, how many of those dudes are actually armed with guns and not just stabbing weapons or blunt objects?
pretty much never. They're never armed with guns.
Why?
I don't know.
The standard henchman gun is like the Uzi, or like some kind of AK or something like that. I think to be a henchman, you gotta be strapped, right?
It's true. I feel like in those movies especially, I feel like most of the gun toting happens when he's in the car, so that like he can, outdrive it or whatever. But most of his actual up close fight scenes, very few guns, and usually if there are guns involved, he disables everyone's gun before they get a shot off. So it's like, why did they even bother having them?
Yeah, right.
Another thing that they, especially in sort of martial arts gun, type movies, they'll do the run up to shoot. Which, why would you do that?
I know. Take the distant shot, right?
Yeah, guns have an optimal range, and it's not right next to somebody.
Because even up close, these guys are pretty bad shots.
Oh yeah, they're the worst.
So I guess it really makes you wonder, like, what are the qualities of a good henchman? Like when you're looking at that resume, or if you're in like UK, the CV, what are you looking for in a henchman? Are you looking for keywords? Like, recruiters look for now. They like, scan in certain keywords like will work for low pay, have done some bodyguarding, or they're definitely, like you said, they're not looking for trained mercenaries. They're looking for like average guys who just want to lay their life on the line for a meager pay, right?
Yeah, I feel like the only requirement is that you be willing to wear all black and sunglasses regardless of the time of day. That feels like the only requirement for henchmen in movies. Because what I find hilarious is even when you have heroes that are facing off against villains that are supposed to be like the elite, and their guys are supposed to be elite. John Wick is a perfect example of this, right? Yes,
totally.
I understand that he is this uber assassin, but you're telling me that not one other assassin in this world they've created is on par with him? And they're all supposed to be these elite killers, but he just makes them look pathetic at every turn.
That's very true. And that's the thing, is like you're not like faced with one or two excellent assassins. He's got like a whole world, a whole society of assassins.
Yeah.
And here's the best part about it. It's like okay when it comes to regular citizens. They look the other way. So it's not like they have to be discreet about it. It's like they can hold these epic assassin battles in public, and people are like, okay, it's fine. So they should really be going all out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it just...
All right, let me ask you this. Who, from 80s and 90s movies, what's the one guy that you've noticed in every action movie as a henchman?
Oh, my goodness. Well, I would say one of the main rules that we set when we started this series was don't be overconfident. Like that is your biggest enemy as a hench person, because you don't have the skills to back that up. And I feel like in every action movie, there is some no-named hench person who just thinks they are God's gift, and and they just stroll up with this.
Do you have anyone that comes to mind in particular?
No, because I mean they're usually just no names. You know, they're just. But I can give you an example.
Give me a movie.
I can give you one
example.
example. Is did you see Deadpool? The first Deadpool?
Yes.
So, and when he takes out everyone on the bridge except for the one guy who kind of like the bullet stopped right on his forehead, and then that guy gets up. He's seen everyone else butchered. He himself has almost been killed. Gets up, rolls up his sleeves, pulls out 2 knives, and just runs at Deadpool like, I got this, when you don't got this.
Yeah, pretty much, right?
Yeah, and there's always that guy in those movies.
There's always that guy. Always. It's funny that so you answered the question in a totally different way, because what I was asking, and that makes perfect sense, because there's always that guy. I wanted to know if there's an actor that you noticed that's in multiple action movies from the 80s and 90s as a henchman that you've seen carry over. Because I got one in mind.
Who's your one in mind?
I can't remember his name, but he's an Asian guy with long hair. He usually keeps it in a ponytail. And I know he's in Last Action Hero. He's the guy that gets the ice cream cone to the back of the head. And he's also, I think, in Die Hard as well. But he's been in a bunch of movies.
Al Leong is, I think, his name.
Is it?
Yeah. He was in...
He stands out.
Lethal Weapon, right?
Yes.
That guy? Yeah, that's Al Leong. Yeah. I've actually met him once. Yeah.
Did you?
Yep.
No way.
Yeah, we were
That's awesome.
We were doing a podcast outside of a screening for, was it Big Trouble in Little China? I think it was Big Trouble in Little China. We were doing a podcast outside the screening, and a couple of the actors for it showed up to do a Q&A, and we got to interview them beforehand, and he was one of them. He was a super nice guy.
That's awesome. Was James Hong there?
No, none of the super big stars. It was more just the like stunt guys, stunt performers. So
okay, that's still pretty rad though.
Yeah. But you're right.
Because I was gonna say
he's one of those guys that he's in all those movies and has that confidence.
He does. He really does, and he's always wearing the shades too. I think it's just great that you guys actually break that down and like how to survive as a henchman. You know,
we did end up extending it to because look, there's only so many tropes that you have in action movies, and we didn't even finish the series out the way we had intended, but we did end up extending it to like bosses, like boss villains, because they are not without sins as well. Like the monologue is the downfall of many a villain, especially, you know, I think everyone parodies it from like James Bond and stuff like that, where they just go on that, here are my plans when I should just be killing you. Mm-hmm. Austin Powers parodies that really, really well.
Yes. Scott Evil. Why don't I just go get a gun? We shoot him in the head. Yeah. But wait, wasn't there? Oh no, it's Mission Impossible. Philip Seymour Hoffman's character just does it. Like, rather than laying out his plan, he just like goes to town. Like, he's like a really good villain in that, and he doesn't go into that whole trope of being that, here's my plan, and I'm going to tell you the whole thing, give you enough time to get out of your restraints and foil me or wait for the Deus Ex to come.
Yeah.
You know?
That was smart filmmaking, because he actually does have a villainous monologue. They just put it in an earlier scene. It's mm-hmm. actually when he's captured that he gives that kind of, here's what I'm going to do to you kind of thing. And it's like, that's super villainous, right? And that's the kind of thing
mm-hmm.
you would expect the villain to do when they already have the hero captive. But instead they do it earlier so that when he actually has the hero captive, he can just be no nonsense. And you're right, it's very refreshing.
Yeah. And he's just a totally badass bad guy too.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And again, I think with that, it was being a J.J. Abrams movie, like he's such a nerd that I think he wanted something kind of different from what had come before.
Yeah.
Which, it's funny. Are you a fan of the John Woo one?
A lot of people aren't, but I am actually.
You are?
I'm a John Woo fan in general, so most of his stuff, he has a couple of questionable American films that I'm like,
like what? Broken Arrow?
Broken Arrow. Broken Arrow is one of those where that's good cheesy fun just because John Travolta's so over the top. But I'm talking like Paycheck with Ben Affleck.
Actually, I watched that not too long ago. It wasn't terrible. Still good. Still well shot. I mean, obviously not like his Hong Kong stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
But if you said Face Off, we would just have to end it right here because you have not only John Travolta, but you got Nicolas Cage playing off of that intensity. And I think whatever you say about the movie, it elevates the movie beyond what it is or what it should be or what it could have been just because Nicolas Cage going crazy in that movie.
Oh, for sure. Hands down, he's the best part of it. And when they actually do the face swap, it just kills everything because now it's just John Travolta being John Travolta from the 90s and 2000s. It's like just being a bad guy. And it's like, no, I need more of that Cage. Bring it back.
But maybe this shows Cage's range. Like he goes from this like crazy guy, like goes full Cage to like very sensitive Cage.
Yeah, but he doesn't get sensitive. He just gets weird because I think when he's supposed to be playing the good guy character, isn't that the scene with the his face off? Isn't that or is he caging at that point? I can't remember, but that's just one of those lines from that movie.
No, that's before he takes the face off. He's like, I'm gonna take his face off. So he says the titular line at that moment, and that's like at the height of the cagey, I guess, like right before everything goes down, right?
Yeah.
But that movie, I mean, it is pure 90s action, Americanized Woo.
Yeah.
But it's still pretty good.
Yeah, and you can definitely see all of Woo's trademarks all over it. The, slow-mo.
Doves,
double pistols, shotguns, motorcycles. Like, he loves those things.
Uh-huh.
In fact, Hard Target is one of my favorite American-made John Woo films.
Real, I haven't seen that in so long. I should go back and watch that. About, what was it, like 2 years ago, a year ago, I watched, what was Jean-Claude Van Damme's show on Prime? Like Jean-Claude Van Johnson or something?
Yeah.
And it made me fall in love with Jean-Claude Van Damme all over again. I'm like, I got to go back and watch some of his movies. Like Double Impact and Hard Target and Time Cop was a classic.
Yeah. So for me, Jean-Claude Van Damme was my first action star. That's Bloodsport. I saw it when I was a wee lad, probably younger than I should have to see it. But like he was my first action star. And, sure, he reached a period where he started making questionable choices, but I still love all his early work.
Are we talking Double Dragon here?
I don't think he was in Double Dragon.
Wasn't he?
No, that was Double Dragon is Mark Dacascos, Scott Wolf, and the
yes,
Robert
you're right.
Patrick? Is that the T-1000?
You're right.
I can't remember. But
I'm thinking of, didn't they want Van Damme for Johnny Cage though?
They did.
Mortal Kombat?
Yeah, and he turned it down for Street Fighter. I think Street Fighter is what you're thinking of.
That's what I'm thinking of. Street Fighter, not Double Dragon. Street Fighter. Yes, and Street Fighter was terrible.
Yeah, Street Fighter.
And it sucks that Raul Julia had to stoop down to that as well.
Yeah,
because he was great, but it was Street Fighter.
Yeah, that's real tragic about that with him. But I mean, he was doing it for his kids, so I applaud him for being a part of it. It's just that whole production was just a train wreck, and Van Damme was like coked out of his mind while they were filming it. Like it just not a good situation.
I didn't know that. Really?
Oh yeah, yep.
Can you imagine fighting Jean-Claude Van Damme coked up, dude?
Right.
Like you already don't want to mess with him, but then you got to fight him coked up. Oh, dude, you're over, man. Like he was probably like destroying stunt guys left and right. Well, like you got to pull your kicks, bro.
And what's funny is that Raul Julia actually did most of his fighting with him.
Did he?
Yep. He insisted on it.
Wow.
So
Who else was in that movie? Ming-Na Wen?
Ming-Na Wen. Yeah, there's a big cast though. West Studios is in it.
Yes. Yep. He was Balrog, right?
Yep. Or
Yep.
Sagat, I think. I don't remember.
Oh, he was
'Cause
Sagat.
always
Yeah, he
switch
was
the
Sagat.
names
That's
around,
what. Yeah. Yep. He was Sagat. Yep.
What's his name? Byron Mann.
Balrog's basically Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, there was a big cast in that. It's just unfortunately that movie was just not good.
Yeah. Okay. So here's a big question for you. What video game adaptation is actually good?
Okay. Well, in my opinion,
All right. Yeah, I got you going here. Come on.
in my
lay it on me.
opinion, Mortal Kombat is to me the best video game adaptation film I've ever seen.
Really?
Now,
you need to break this down for me because I just watched it again, and I'll get into how I feel, but I want to know how you feel.
so you have to understand when the movie came out. Like if you judge that film by today's action standards, it doesn't necessarily hold up. There's some questionable CG for sure, but when you look at it from 1995's point of view, that movie had it going on. It had a somewhat cohesive story. You had the charm of Christopher Lambert as Raiden. I think Robin Shaw, I think is his name, he was great as Liu Kang.
He was, yes.
You know, some of
And
the
of
other
course, Shang Tsung, who they've put into Mortal Kombat 11.
Yep.
What's his name? Robin.
Carrie.
Oh yeah,
something.
Robin Liu was Liu Kang, but yeah, Carrie. Is it Fukunawa or something?
It's something Japanese. I'm not gonna without
sorry.
seeing it, I wouldn't.
Yes.
I wouldn't know.
But he was awesome as Shang Tsung. You're right.
Yeah, and they had
So
some really good fighters involved. In fact, so little bit of information. I have interviewed Chris Casamassa, who played Scorpion in the movie, on our show a couple of times. He actually runs Red Dragon Karate in Southern California. Like there's a whole big chain of them. His dad started it, and he runs a bunch of dojos and stuff like that. And he's a super nice guy as well. He was Scorpion in that. He's done a bunch of stunt doubling in martial arts scenarios. He was George Clooney's Batman stunt double in Batman and Robin. Yeah. And so
he wore the nipples too.
yeah, probably. But he told me a lot about what they went through to get the fights choreographed and stuff like that. Like apparently they were really going at it for authenticity on the set. So it was, but to me, it is. I think it still holds up for the most part. Again, there are some questionable spots. I'm not going to say that the movie's perfect, but yeah, Goro's a little weak, but
dialogue.
Wait, it's a video game movie. What do you want? It still leaps and bounds over Street Fighter.
Yeah, that's true. So here's my take. Like, all right, Paul W.S. Anderson knocks it out of the park with Event Horizon. I think we can all agree on that, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
With that.
And I watched it again recently just to see, because I remember I loved it. And then thereafter, anything that Paul W.S. Anderson did, looking back on it, didn't have too many fond memories besides Resident Evil. And I made a point to watch that again. But Mortal Kombat. So I think the cinematography is really nice in it. There's some really good shots in there, especially like the Shaolin temples, like that whole scene when Liu Kang is coming to grips with that he's going to go avenge his brother and fight in Mortal Kombat and stuff like that. Looked pretty cool and nice. Except like they totally like did this like crazy sky in there, which looked kind of fake, but it was still pretty cool. But then when you get on the boat, things start to go downhill. And like the boat was like a total set. It's like you did not feel like they were on a boat in the sea. It was like total set. And the dialogue is really bad. And you have some really good actors in there. And actually, the guy who played Kano was awesome. Like, he hammed it up, but he didn't ham it up enough that he came off terrible. Like, he was really good. Of course, the guy that played Liu Kang, awesome. Scorpion, and Sub-Zero, and Christopher Lambert. I mean, Christopher Lambert, who would have ever thought that you would make Christopher Lambert Raiden? And he did it, because Christopher Lambert is amazing. And Actually, I'm gonna after this. I want to get into Highlander because I know you guys did something about Highlander, and I'm a big fan of Highlander. But I just felt like the dialogue was really bad. Johnny Cage, I thought he was okay. Goro was my main thing that I hated back when I was younger, like in what was it, middle or high school when I saw it when it came out. I was like, Goro just looked ridiculous, like very bad, and doesn't hold up at all.
You're right. He doesn't look great. But I do applaud them for using puppetry instead of CG. I mean, he's CG in a couple scenes, but it's usually like the pulled back stuff. But yeah, if they would have gone full CG, I think it would have looked even more horrendous.
Oh, it would have looked terrible. Yeah.
So
actually, who was it? Bridget Wilson who played Sonya Blade?
Yes.
Yeah, she was great.
Yeah.
But then they, for whatever reason, you probably know why they cut her out in the second one. And this, you don't care for the second one, do you?
No, no, that movie is trash.
But it tried to take what, because you gotta, like, how old are you?
I am. What year is it? It's 2020. I'm 39.
Okay, so I'm 38. You're right there. Actually, I'm 39 too. Fuck, man. I just had a Jumanji moment too. Shit, what year is it? Anyway, so you're right there with me. Okay, so remember how cool Mortal Kombat 2 was when it came out? Mm-hmm. It was like Mortal Kombat was the best, and if you had Sega Genesis, you had the Mortal Kombat with blood. Like you go from the arcade, you're playing Mortal Kombat with blood, right?
Yep.
Then Super Nintendo gets the port of it, but it has no blood, but the graphics are better. So it was like that toss up. It's like, do I want to play something that looks better and reacts better, but with no blood, not the awesome fatalities and stuff? And then Mortal Kombat 2 comes out. It's amazing in the arcade, and then they put the ports over, and the Super Nintendo version was like awesome, full on, rated mature, badass, right? Like Mortal Kombat 2 was big, man. So when they were putting out Mortal Kombat, the sequel, Annihilation, I was like, okay, the first movie is okay. It wasn't terrible, but maybe this one would be awesome. And they brought in all those cool characters. They had Jax, which they had in the first one, but he didn't really do too much, right? And then Cyrax and Sector were in there, and the movie was just terrible.
Yeah, I think they just tried to do too much. Is what it was. They tried to. I mean, the movie tried to include the plot from the third game, but there was just too many storylines going on and stuff that didn't make sense. It was just like they're like, oh, you know what? The people will like it if we throw this character in the movie. All right, but what for? No reason. Just put him in there. Just have him come in and say a line. Just have Nightwolf come on and turn into a wolf and then be like, that was my animality, and then peace out. Like, what?
I love Nightwolf too. That was one of my favorite characters to play as.
Yeah, and he's just wasted in the movie.
Totally.
And don't even talk about those animalities at the end when they, the dragon and the whatever Shao Kahn was supposed to be. Oh, so bad.
But it seems like they can never get Mortal Kombat right. No matter how many years pass and they try to make movies of it, they just keep on failing at it. Yeah. There was something really cool though, and you probably saw it. It was like that internet series of Mortal Kombat with Michael J. White.
Oh yeah,
which was really cool.
It was like I think the director of that was trying to use that as a test footage to convince the studios to make a new movie.
And he got screwed, right?
I think so. I know they're supposed to be working on it. Well, were before the world turned to shit. But I think they were supposed to be working on a new Mortal Kombat movie because we've talked about on the show, we've talked about some of the casting choices that were announced.
Who do they have?
I don't even remember at this point. I know one of the guys from the Raid Redemption is supposed to be cast. But honestly, I don't really remember. It's been so long since we've talked about it.
That dude, I can't remember his name in the Raid, is so awesome. The main character.
Yeah.
And those were like, especially in the second one, there was that whole scene, if you look at the behind the scenes of it, when they're doing that car chase and how they hid the cameras. Did you ever see that?
No, I haven't seen any of the behind the scenes stuff.
Oh, dude, you gotta look it up on like YouTube. It should be on there. But it's like during the car chase scene, how they hid the cameraman was like they had a cameraman in the car, but I think he was playing the passenger seat. And I know this sounds ridiculous, but he's actually dressed as the passenger seat of the car while filming. And then when the action is happening and the main character moves from the car to the other car, like he hands off the camera to another guy in the other car. Like that's how insane the filming was for this. And it's so fast paced that they have to like hide the camera guys in the actual environment because it's so close quarters. Like I thought that was amazing.
Yeah,
you don't get the action like that.
I definitely love that kind of stuff, especially like when you look at Hong Kong cinema and the guerrilla tactics that they have to use to get these movies that they do. And, you know, I loved when they started releasing Jackie Chan movies from over there out here, and he would do the outtake reels, and you could see like how injured they would get sometimes. There's been a couple of moments in Jackie Chan movies where I'm pretty sure a stuntman died. Like just when you're watching it, you're like, nah, he's dead.
And Jackie Chan, think about it, like how many bones has that guy broken?
Yeah, right.
No, it's a lot. Like I don't know where he listed it.
I thought I read somewhere that he's broken every bone.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's factual or not, but that's what I heard.
I'm sure if it's not entirely fact, it's close to fact, because a guy that does his own stunts and the kind of stuff that he was doing. Mm-hmm. And then as he gets older, he's like, oh, I'm still going to do my own stunts, even though now I'm like in my 40s and 50s and stuff. Right? Like, I mean, you're getting banged up, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. But hey,
I mean, the insurance people are probably like, no, we can't cover this movie. They're like, no, he'll be fine. He's Jackie Chan. They're like, dude, that's your principal actor, man. We can't insure this. Like, he's old now. You know, how do you get that insurance policy for the movie?
I think that's why they toned down all his stuff in his American films, is for those exact reasons, probably for insurance. So that's why you get someone like Tom Cruise who can just fund his own movie and he can try to kill himself on every one.
That's true. And now he's going to space.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't wait to see that. Okay, so what's your opinion on Tom Cruise as far as Tom Cruise movies? I have to say I love Tom Cruise movies. There's something about Tom Cruise, like Tom Cruise, say whatever you want about his personal life. I think he's a great actor. I think he's like Keanu Reeves. Like Keanu Reeves, I think Cruise is a better actor than Keanu Reeves. I'm not saying Keanu Reeves is a bad actor, but I think Keanu Reeves just picks good movies to be in, and he is able to, because he's such a really good guy, he's such a genuine, great human being. He lucks into really great movies, and he's successful because of it. Not because of his acting, like he's the best in the world, but he works hard and he does it right. Tom Cruise, on the other hand, he is a really good actor, and it's like seeing those little pieces where he is doing the actual acting in, like Magnolia is one example. Have you ever seen that?
I have not, no.
You should see it. It's really good. And we were talking about Philip Seymour Hoffman earlier. He's in that as well. And his part, this was back when he was kind of coming up. So that is a Paul Thomas Anderson movie. And Philip Seymour Hoffman at the time, like before that, he was in Boogie Nights with Paul Thomas Anderson, kind of a bit part. And this one, he has a more meatier role. But Tom Cruise plays like this, like seduce and destroy type of guy who's holding seminars for guys how to get women, you know, and he's like this total like alpha male, like, you know, take everything you want by the horns, you know, it's yours. And then he has this really dramatic turn in the movie, which is really good. So I think he's a great action star. Like you can see that in Mission Impossible and, you know, Top Gun, all that kind of stuff. But then he also is a really good dramatic actor as well, like in Rain Man and so forth. What are your thoughts on him?
I actually really enjoy Tom Cruise. Even when there was that period where he was jumping on couches and getting real.
He was in love,
getting real crazy with people about Scientology, and his kind of like I would say his star power kind of diminished for a bit. Even then, like I don't, I'm not into Scientology in any way, but that doesn't discount the fact that the man can make entertaining movies.
He can.
And you're right. He balances the acting with the action star thing. I mean, most of the time you're going to get a little bit of both in his movies. I think Last Samurai is a great example of that. Like you got some serious acting from him, but you also have a ton of action in this movie as well. The Mission Impossibles, yeah, he does show a little bit of emotional range, but it's not as much. That's more action focused, but they're still like just tremendously entertaining. One of my favorite films that I don't think did very well when it came out is Night and Day. I don't know if you ever saw that one with him and Cameron Diaz.
I have not. Should I watch it?
Oh my God. It's like if it's like Ethan Hunt, but if Ethan Hunt was kind of wacky and had a sense of humor. Like that's he's just a joy to watch in that movie, in my opinion. And Cameron Diaz also is just their chemistry is so good. All
right. I'm gonna definitely check it out then. You've converted me because I've always seen that that's there as part of his filmography, and I'm like, I don't know, should I? But especially both my wife and I really like Tom Cruise, so I think that would be a great movie to watch together.
Oh yeah, I think you guys would enjoy it. It's like I said, it's got your spy stuff, it's got your action, it's got some comedy in it. I think it's just really, really good.
Nice. All right. I'm trying to think of in the Mission Impossible movies, like he does get pretty dramatic when it comes to his wife. Mm-hmm. Like those are the parts that he really kind of shows that emotion beyond being like the I can't even say that. What is it? Compartmentalized. That's it. That's the word. Guy, who can like put his feelings aside for the mission, right?
Right.
But when it came to his wife, like that's where, you're pushing him to that breaking point, and he's going to do whatever he can.
Yeah, I think 3, right? 3 is the one.
Yeah, 3 was the definite one. Yeah.
Yeah, I think 3 is where you get the most acting out of him in that whole franchise, for sure.
Yeah. Watching it again, like I remember how big Mission Impossible was when it came out. Like it was really huge, the original Brian De Palma movie. And I remember, I think at the time McDonald's was running a promotion and I got the VHS from McDonald's. And I think I got Forrest Gump there too. Like they were like, for some reason, selling VHS movies. Really random. But I think that's where I got it. But I remember seeing it in the theater and just blown away. But years later, once you've watched so many movies and you like realize like, oh, I'm like a film nerd. Like I just love movies. Yeah. And then you watch Mission Impossible again and you just realize how fucking cool it is. Like, especially because it's Brian De Palma, like he has those really cool angles that are not typical for most action movies. Did you ever notice that? Like, how long has it been since you watched the movie?
What's funny is that I actually just watched all of them through within the month.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what did your thoughts change from way back when you watched it to now?
I mean, I'm definitely watching them with more mature eyes than when I first saw them, but the quality of the films I don't think has ever been in question. I've always enjoyed them, but I know exactly what you're talking about with the camera angles and stuff. It's not, I wouldn't say he uses like Dutch angles, but there's definitely some interesting shots that just where the camera's positioned. You're like, oh yeah, it intensifies the mood of the scene.
What was one example I think was it in the restaurant before he sticks the gum on the,
Yep.
Yeah. Like that was a really cool kind of like overhead, like you said, not a Dutch angle, like not like a Sam Raimi Dutch angle or something, something crazy like that. But like just weird enough that it's like, whoa, like not many directors use that certain angle on a shot. And I thought that was really neat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing about the Mission Impossible movies too, is that I mean, the more modern ones now that we get, like Ghost Protocol, Rogue Nation, Fallout, all those all pretty much, they've found their footing and they're consistent with the way that the movies are presented. But like when the franchise first started, De Palma's film was more of this almost like, I mean, it was definitely like a hardcore spy thriller, right? You had some minor action closer to the end, but it wasn't action heavy. It was more like the psychological stuff and that kind of a thing. Then you jump to part 2, which was just straight up, that's just, Ethan Hunt with a kung fu grip. That whole movie was just action Ethan Hunt. And then we get to 3, and that's pretty much where it started to make that turn, where it blended kind of everything, like the drama with the action, but it wasn't ridiculous over the top John Woo style action. And then I feel like that kind of is carried through the rest of the movies since then.
I think so too. Like that 3 set the template for the rest of the series, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And I thought 4 was just phenomenal too.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was a really good one. What are we at? 5 was Rogue Nation, right? So it's 4 is Ghost Protocol, 5 is Rogue Nation?
Yeah, and then 6 was Fallout. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, man, then what one am I thinking about? Did you ever watch Lost?
You know what? I've never seen Lost. I've seen bits of episodes, but I've never seen a full episode of Lost.
Oh, dude, you got to check it out. If you're a film nerd, that's the show to watch. Just because the writing is fantastic. But I was going to say, if you could remember the one with one of the characters from Lost is in the beginning and he gets taken out, Josh Holloway.
That's I know the actor. So
okay.
Shoot, I think that's the one where they're in Dubai.
Yeah. Oh, that whole thing when during the sandstorm when he's climbing the building.
Yeah, I think that one's. I think that one's Ghost Protocol. I think that one.
I think so too. Yeah.
Yeah,
that was really cool. Yeah, that was a really cool movie. Yeah, you should listen. Do you read books? Mm-hmm. Are you a book reader? Okay. Lost, like, I have to say it's one of my favorite shows of all time, and the reason being, it's like the best book that I've ever read. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I'm saying that is because, like, you know how in a book, like, they really get in like the character's head and their motivations and stuff, and you really know so much about a character because of the exposition. But in like most movies or TV shows, you're only shown, a small amount of information, and maybe there's like a character arc, and then that's the movie, right? Mm-hmm. Well, in Lost, like, because I've always been a big King fan, so I always like how he like describes people and gets in their head. Like Lost is kind of similar in that way. It's like you'll meet a character in the present, but throughout the series, you'll see that character in flashbacks, like even back to like when they were born. I'm like, what? Like what's cool about Lost is, like, the first season, I think anybody who's ever watched it is just like instantly hooked, right? And it's a little bit like Game of Thrones, right? So Game of Thrones, like, everybody's like hooked right away, right? Mm-hmm. Because they don't put the nerd stuff in there right away. They got all the formulas in there that are like gonna get you hooked on a show. Like, great writing, great characters, suspense, cliffhanger episodes, and then by the end of the season, they'll kind of throw in like a little bit of nerdiness. But by that point, you're already hooked. Like, Game of Thrones, once they threw in the dragons, like you could ask anybody, like, hey, do you like dragons? Like, I'm not a big fan of dragons. I think it's nerd stuff, but then you show them the Game of Thrones and you don't tell them anything about it. And then by the end, they're like, okay, dragons are cool. Like, yeah.
Do you like boobs and dongs?
Yeah.
Yes,
exactly.
I do. Here's a show for you. And it's got dragons.
Yep. And that's what I'm saying. It's like that misdirection, right? And that's what Lost did. It was a huge misdirection because it did all those things that we love about movies and TV, and it did them really well. And then by the time, and it didn't even really get into like the real nerdy stuff, into like till season 3, right? And by season 4, it got into the sci-fi aspect. And then finally you get the actual mythology of the island in like 5 or 6. And you've just had this whole time to like know and love these characters throughout the show, that by the time that they give you all this stuff, which a lot of people kind of dropped out at those points, I think like the true people who really appreciate it stood by, because they're like, this is what I came here for. Like, this is, I want to know more. You know, I want to know, I really want to dig deep into this thing, because like Lost is one of those shows where you can watch an episode, but if you go online and you look like at somebody pick apart the episode, there's so much stuff that you missed. Yeah. Like little details that harken back to like episodes previously or years before this event took place. And it's just, it's a very dense show. And it doesn't have a happy ending with like a nice red bow on top of it. Like you're still thinking afterwards, which is great. And that's why people didn't like it. If they stuck around to the end, they're like, they didn't like that it wasn't all wrapped up nice and neatly for them.
Yeah.
But if you're like a guy who like really, or a person in general who like really likes to like think about something and really analyze it and stuff, like it'll be the perfect show, you know. And it's got enough action for you. It's great. And it's got, we were talking about Resident Evil, movies or video games to movies. Michelle Rodriguez is in it, and she's a badass.
Yeah, I think I don't know if she's ever acting. I feel like she is just a badass. Like that's good, which is why she plays that in every movie that she's in.
What? No. Get this. I read something the other day. I don't know where it was, but it was like they were talking about Michelle Rodriguez and like the roles that she takes. And I think it was like, you know how you get typecast? Mm-hmm. So Michelle Rodriguez is not that type of person, but she realized like it was either that or just be like some bland character actor, who didn't get meaty roles. But like taking on that role of like the tough person really made her career. So it's like, it's that. Did she want to play that? Probably not. Maybe she wanted to be more branched out. But at the same time, it's like, hey, I'm getting some good work and I'm in memorable stuff like Fast and the Furious. Come on, man.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Like you mentioned Resident Evil. I don't actually particularly like that franchise, but I do remember her from it. And even like SWAT, which I don't know many people that remember that movie. But it's in my collection. I enjoy it.
Is it?
Yeah.
Are you a Colin Farrell fan?
I do like Colin Farrell. I don't go out of my way or anything to watch his stuff. It was just when that movie came out, I watched it. I was into it.
That's Sam Jackson's in there too, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. It was LL Cool J.
Yeah.
Oh, who else is in there? Jeremy Renner.
Yes.
Is in it? Because once he joined the MCU, I was made jokes about the fact that Hawkeye and Bullseye were both part of the SWAT together in their former life.
They were. Did anybody like question like who's Bullseye, man? I never watched Daredevil. That movie's trash. Or no, he was in Elektra, right?
No, he was in Daredevil. Yeah.
He was in Daredevil, okay. Yeah.
Honestly, I thought he was the best part of that movie. And he was way over the top.
Yeah, he was. But he's a great actor though. Mm-hmm. And that's why. Like in I think the last Colin Farrell movie I saw was The Lobster, which was great.
I haven't seen
like
that.
He's just it's very quirky, but it is very good. I think from the Colin Farrell movies that I've seen, he just always holds his own in. He's really good. So I'm with you there if you are a Colin Farrell fan.
Yeah, I do enjoy him. But again, he's not one that like, there's certain actors that if they're in a movie, I'm like, oh, I'm definitely going to see that movie. Like if The Rock is in anything, I'm like, I'm there. I'm going to do it. I don't care what it is. I'm watching it.
Was Skyscraper any good?
Okay, so Skyscraper wasn't great, but it still got me to the theater because he was in it. It was, it was one of these movies where I was like, okay, so it's The Rock in Die Hard? Sure, let's do this. And it was not great at all. But, they still got my money.
Yeah, I will see anything the Rock's in as well. I haven't seen Skyscraper, but if it was on, HBO or something for free or Prime or Netflix, I think I would watch it just because it's The Rock or Dwayne Johnson.
Honestly, if you're not shelling out extra money to see it, like if you're already paying for a streaming service of some kind and it's on, I think it's worth a watch. Yeah.
We watch, so me and my wife, right? And this is funny. This is hilarious. So because I think he's just such a charismatic dude. Mm-hmm. But it took me a long time because I was not into wrestling as much as other people, and like I knew him as The Rock, and then when he went over like a lot of other guys to acting, I was like, like how many wrestlers have gone to acting, right? Yeah. But I think very few have made that transition, but they're just so charismatic and they're just so cool that it works, So, I'd seen a couple movies with The Rock, like The Rundown and stuff. So San Andreas was on HBO one day, and I was like, okay. I think my friend recommended it to me, and I told my wife, because me and my wife, we don't talk during movies. We just watch it, right? Mm-hmm. And I was like, look, I can't guarantee that this movie is going to be good. I have no idea what we're getting ourselves into, but we're going to watch this, and we're going to take it in for all it is. And I was warned about this beforehand, but I think we have to watch it just to see it. And we watched it. And we're just like ripping on the movie the whole time. Like that was the only movie where we actually talked and we laughed and we ripped on it the whole. It was like, when you're younger and you have your friends over and you're just like ripping apart like, action movies or disaster movies and stuff. Because that's what it's an action disaster. And we're just doing that. And we had a blast. Like we had a good time just like pulling this movie apart and all these little things. But it was still like, it wasn't a terrible movie. It was like a fun time. It was a fun experience. We were having a good time watching it and just like picking it apart.
Yeah, what's funny is I remember when the trailers for that came out, and then I want to say within a year or two, it feels like, but Rampage came out, and the way that The Rock is dressed and the action sequences that they showed in the clips in the trailers for both films, it honestly looked like they just had leftover footage from San Andreas and then added some CG monsters in. Like that's it.
Really?
It looked like the same movie.
Did you watch it though?
I did not see Rampage, unfortunately.
You're a terrible Rock fan. What are you doing, man?
Apparently. I'm also a terrible video game adaptation fan, too.
I heard... So I did this episode with Bruce Vogue, and he worked for gaming companies, like tabletop gaming and stuff, like board games. He told me a really good game, and it's not called Rampage anymore because it was based on the video game Rampage, but there was a rights dispute, so they had to change the name of it. But he told me it's a really good board game and that we should check it out. And I remember the video game is awesome. Like, I mean, for the time, it's basically pretty repetitive, just smashing buildings, but it was fun, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, when you're a kid, you get to be a monster that eats people to restore your health and stuff.
Right? Stealing people out of the windows and stuff.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. Do you remember Primal Rage?
Yes, I think.
Yeah.
This is the one, or no, I'm thinking of something else. Describe the game to me.
It was a dinosaur fighting game.
Yes.
So
yes, I did.
Yeah. Wasn't that rad?
I don't think I played it all that much, to be honest.
You never played it?
No.
Oh, it was so cool. It was like Mortal Kombat, but for dinosaurs. Like they had fatalities and stuff in there too. It was awesome.
Yeah, I think when that game came out, though, the market was kind of flooded with fighting games because after Mortal Kombat hit it big, these just had all these other games coming out. You had what was it, Killer Instinct and
Virtua Fighter, Tekken.
Yeah, all those. Just so many
Street
games
Fighter.
to play, and I wasn't a wealthy child, so I I usually ended up playing most video games a couple years after they came out, just because I didn't have a home console for a long time. And I lived in the desert, so it was hard to get to the arcade. We did have an arcade, but it was hard to get to it. So,
What desert did you live in?
29 Palms, California.
Okay.
Out,
So how far away was the nearest arcade?
Well, the arcade it was probably only a few miles, but when you're a little kid in the blazing desert heat and you don't have a parent that'll take you, it's it seems like a whole Sahara Desert away. So
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm with you. That's not the kind of walk you want to make, right?
nope, not at all.
So did you get into movies then? Like being out there, like were you like the child of the cable years, like growing up on HBO and stuff?
Not even that. We didn't have cable until I was probably like in high school, I want to say. And we moved around a lot. I was a military brat.
Okay.
But once we got to 29, that's where we pretty much were there for most of like a little bit of elementary school, and then like most of high school. And then I moved a couple locations between, then, but always came back. But we did have a drive-in out there, which is something that I know like some people are picking up again and going to the drive-in. But that was the closest movie theater we had out there. And so we'd go to the drive-in all the time. And that was a really fun experience. And, pretty much renting movies and stuff like that was how I saw everything.
What were the best movies that you saw at the drive-in?
Ooh. It's so hard to remember everything that I've seen there. I can tell you one of the most memorable, I'm not saying that the movie was great, but the ambiance of the desert at night really heightened the experience of the movie, and that was the Blair Witch Project.
I can see that.
Yeah, because I don't think the Blair Witch Project is really that good or scary, but when you have just desert noises in the background while you're trying to watch this thing, it definitely heightens the experience.
What's funny is, so you're on the totally other end of the coast, right? Like I grew up in Maryland, so when Blair Witch came out, like it was in. Do you recall offhand the town that it was based in?
Oh no, I don't.
All right,
was it a real town or was it a?
It's a real town, but it's not a real story. But the town exists, and I remember when the movie came out, like even though it was fake, but that was the thing at the time is like they didn't quite say yes or no. Like that was the whole allure of it,
Right, yeah.
But I remember we wanted to go down there so bad to check it out and kind of see the sights, like real or not, just to kind of check it out, see how eerie it was. But I can't even imagine watching it outside in the desert with desert sounds. Like that's got to be spooky as all get out, huh?
Yeah. Like I said, it definitely heightened the experience of that movie for sure.
Did you ever see the second one?
Unfortunately, yes, I did.
Yeah, we all got suckered into it, right?
Yeah, which is funny because it has one of my favorite actors in it, Jeffrey Donovan, who would go on to star in Burn Notice, which is like one of my favorite TV shows of all time.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. Is he the guy that delivers the best joke in the entire? And actually, the whole reason why you should pay to see the entire movie is like, oh yeah, what'd you go to college for? To learn how to brush your teeth? Because the other person's wearing the Colgate shirt.
Yeah, I can't remember. I just know he was the main guy. The video, like the guy that was filming everything and taking them out. That was him. And like I didn't know that was him.
Was Joey Lawrence in that too?
Who?
Was Joey Lawrence in that?
That I don't know. The only reason I even know about Jeffrey Donovan is that I was recently watching a YouTube video about the making of that movie and how much studio interference basically ruined that film. Because the movie that we got in theaters,
so it should have been good.
Was supposed to be vastly different than what we got, and the studio just kept butchering stuff, taking stuff out, reordering things. Like nothing is the way that it was supposed to be presented. But when I was watching that, obviously they're showing clips from the movie and I was like, oh my God, it's him. I didn't even know he was in this.
Is there? Do you know if there's a director's cut though? That's like the way that it should have been.
No, I don't think so. Because I mean, the movie did abysmally. I think. Can't remember. Honestly, it might have actually had a decent turnout because of the.
I think it did because of the success of Blair Witch. Like everybody wanted to see Blair Witch too.
Yeah, I think you might be right.
It came at the perfect time when the internet wasn't such a big force as it was years later to like really destroy the movie and say like you got to stay away from this thing. It's terrible.
Actually, it wasn't stellar, but it only had a budget of $15 million and it made $47 million.
There you go.
It still had a profit.
There you go. All right. So speaking of, if you want to call it abysmal, if you want to call it what, because everybody has their thoughts on it who's ever seen it. And we talked about Christopher Lambert earlier, and we were talking about action stuff. So I want to get to this at some point because I think it's very important. Highlander.
Yeah, I was going to say, if we didn't get to Highlander and you teased me with it earlier, I would hate you forever.
No, I would never do that to you because when you find your kin in Highlander fandom, I don't know anybody in real life that likes Highlander.
Oh my
except
God.
for one guy I knew back in middle school who loved Highlander, who showed it to me. And then now in my adult life, I just don't know anybody who cares for Highlander. And it sucks. It's a meek existence. So please, tell me about your love for Highlander.
Oh my God. It knows no bounds. So I saw this movie when I was a youngster. I saw it, and which interesting. I'm going to tell you a funny story. It's not that funny, but it's. I saw Highlander 2 before I saw Highlander 1. Because obviously Highlander 1 came out before.
And you saw the
born,
theatrical cut?
Yeah, I saw the theatrical cut. Yeah, that's rough. But I still, having not seen the original, I enjoyed it, right? Mm-hmm. You know, there was guys with swords and long flowing locks and trench coats. It's just, you know, I really, really liked the movie. Then I saw the original, and then I was like, oh, I see why the second one sucks. But it didn't change my love of the property as a whole. When the series came out, I was resistant to it at first because I was like, you're replacing Christopher Lambert. Stop it. I don't want this other guy, this Adrian Paul fellow. I don't care for him. But the series grew on me. And in a lot of ways, I think the series is sort of superior to the movies just because they had more time to, you know, flesh everything out and stuff like that. And I do think that Highlander Endgame, the kind of final Christopher Lambert appearance and where they were trying to transition Adrian Paul over into the movies, I actually think that movie's not terrible. Hold on, let me correct that statement. It's terrible in most aspects, but I enjoy some of the action sequences in that film. I like Donnie Yen in there. And I don't believe for an instant he could have been killed by the bad guy in that movie, but sure, whatever. And then the last Highlander movie, we just don't talk about. The Source. I don't know if you saw it.
I'm pretty sure I did.
Oh,
okay, so for me, and this is it's a very sensitive topic because it's Highlander. Like the first one is just so amazing, right? The original Highlander, and I know they're trying to do a remake of it. I don't know how far they've got with it. And it is a movie that could get a remake, but I don't think that they would get it right because the original movie is just so great. Like you have the soundtrack by Queen, you have Christopher Lambert, you have the Kurgan, and who played him?
Clancy Brown.
Clancy Brown, Clancy Brown's in Lost, by the way. So another reason to watch Lost.
Nice.
Yes, he is. Mm-hmm. Okay. So Clancy Brown is just perfect as the Kurgan. And then you got Sean Connery, you know, as the guy with the longest name ever. It is just such a great film. There are parts of the print that are terrible, but it's just such a beautiful story. The problem with Highlander is they wrapped everything up in the first movie. And that's when the studio, I think, came in. They're like, whoa, 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 whoa. We got a lot more to do here. You know, like basically the whole Highlander saga was done with the first movie.
Yep.
You know, and then that's where 2 kind of failed. But the Renegade cut, I think, kind of retcons it a little bit to make it make sense.
It does make it. It makes it a little bit more palatable for sure. But because of how they're trying to dance around the footage that was filmed for the alien sequences, a lot of it still doesn't make sense. But I agree, it is a much better version than the theatrical cut.
I think so. I think you could watch Highlander and then the Renegade cut, and it'll make sense more than the theatrical cut being the whole aliens. Mm-hmm. Even though that's like it's hidden in there, the Renegade cut makes more sense.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. Now, how you feel about the later movies? Because again, we're talking like Highlander is just such a perfect mythology and movie that was self-contained, you know?
Yeah.
That they had to retcon everything from the first movie to make sequels of it.
Yeah.
What I thought was great about the sequels, even though they're not great, is again, the mythology was so cool that there was these pieces of it that I was just like, wow, that's like they really thought long and hard about this. Like when they got into like, you know, churches are sacred ground, right? Like an immortal could hang out at a church for an undisclosed amount of time, like basically in a coma, getting fed nutrients for years upon years, and nobody could touch them in there, right? I thought that was one of the coolest concepts ever. Yeah. Like you got these guys who they've been living so long, they just want to take a couple years off, just hang out, you know? And Adrian Paul actually, and when I started watching the sequels, because I watched the sequels later in life, I was skeptical as well, and I was like, Adrian Paul, why are you coming in here, man? Like, it's Christopher Lambert all the way. But Adrian Paul was actually a really good guy to pick, you know? And the way that so the problem is the way that they hand it off in the movie and the way like and I didn't even finish the series. I got like couple episodes in the first season, right? So I'm like, you know, they have Christopher Lambert in the first season to kind of hand off the torch, but they also have him in the movies to ultimately hand off the torch as well, right? So it's like this whole clusterfuck of like, who is in charge of Highlander to like really kind of bring all this stuff together? Did you feel that like watching the Highlander series? Like who is really driving this Highlander boat? Because there's a lot of cool mythology, but nobody's working hard to try to make it coherent and tie it together, right?
Yeah. No, you're right about it. Because even in the original 3 movies, when you really think about it, because we have a show called Cinema Saga, where we actually rewatch film trilogies or sagas if there's more than 3 movies, and then we kind of discuss each film and we rate the saga as a whole. Well, my pick for our group was Highlander. Neither of my co-hosts had ever seen a Highlander movie before, and they hated me by the end of it. They did not care for the franchise as a whole. But in that discussion, like even I have to admit that they just recycled the plot from, or then the villain from the first 2 movies. When you really think about it, General Katana wears black, talks in a gravelly voice, and tries to scare people. There's the scene with the train that mimics the Kurgan scene in the car with the old lady, right? You cut to the 3rd movie. Mario Van Peebles wears all black, gets his throat cut.
Cool,
so
though.
He has he doesn't have his throat cut. Yeah. He just has a gravelly voice to sound like the Kurgan. And then he has the car chase sequence with the illusions to scare the little kid, which is just like the scene from the first movie. It's like nobody was creative at all there. Like, what? Why?
Yeah. And it's true. Yeah, see, that's the problem. I think, you know, and we kind of got into this with Blair Witch 2 about studio meddling. And I was talking about this in the last episode that I was doing about horror. Like, I think the studio with those was meddling too. You know, they had great ideas, but it was just like, okay, well, we need to see this and this and this, and this is the kind of formula that works. They're like, but no, this is like, listen to all these cool ideas. Like, let's really flesh out the whole universe of the Immortal. And they're like, no, nobody cares about that shit. Like, we need some action. We need a formula that works. Like, it kind of felt like that though, but like, it was like a give and take between the writers and the studio. Whereas like the writers were like slipping in these really cool nerdy things that we really care about and love, but then the studio is also getting their say in as well. Do you think that's the case?
You know, on this, I don't necessarily know that that's the case, though, because I do know that the original film was not, it didn't make money. I think its theatrical gross was like 13 million on a budget of 19 million, so it didn't make money. I think,
but on the back end though, it did, right?
I mean, I'm sure
in the
down
cult
the
market
road for sure, but I think
because you want Connor McLeod's sword, right? Do you have one?
Here's the funny thing. I used to own one. I used to own
what
an
happened to
authentic
it?
replica. Life happened, and I had to sell it when I fell on hard times.
I
Yeah.
know that was tough.
Yeah, it was rough. It was one of my favorite possessions. So,
I want one so bad.
yeah, they're hard to find now, at least of quality.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I want to say these films were kind of like independent features in a sense. The production team, Peter Davis and Bill Panzer, I think were the two main driving forces behind the series. That's just it. Like, they were producers. They weren't creative types. And Bill Panzer, I know especially, I've watched, because I actually own the entire series, and he does a lot of like commentary stuff on the DVDs. And so you kind of get the sense like he was really the driving force behind kind of keeping it going, but like he's not a writer, and it just sounded like maybe he didn't have ideas. I don't know why he didn't bring people in with better ideas, but it is unfortunate because I know you said you only gave this series a couple of episodes. I would go back and try to give it a rewatch, because the series gets into a lot more stuff that they probably could have done in movies if they just tried. Like, there's some very interesting story arcs. Season 7, I think, is the last season. You could skip that altogether because it's only half a season. And I'm not even kidding with you, there is one episode where Adrian Paul is not in the episode at all.
Really?
Yeah. They were doing this weird thing where they were trying to create a spin-off. They were trying to create a spin-off series. And so throughout that season, you got weird things going on, like he's a pacifist because he accidentally killed someone in the previous season that he didn't want to. So he's not using his sword. He doesn't have his signature sword with him. They keep pairing him up with different women each week.
But isn't that a parallel to the first season? Wasn't he out of the game in the first season? He's just like, I'm out.
I think he's only out of the game in the first episode, really, and then he gets drugged back into it. But yeah, they're pairing him up with different women each week because they're trying to screen test these women to see who
what happened to
like.
the main actress, his girlfriend?
Which one?
In the first season, like the first couple episodes. I thought she was like a big part.
You want it ruined? You want me to spoil it?
No spoilers. No.
Okay. But what they ended up doing is there was one episode where they just had some random female immortal and some human cop character, and the episode was about them. It was like they were just trying to test, like, well, what do people think of this pairing here? And interestingly enough, they ended up going with an actress who was already in the show as a recurring character, and they gave her a spinoff that only lasted one season. And I don't even know that did a full season because it wasn't very good. But
who produced this? USA, right? Am I correct in that?
I think that may be where it aired. I don't remember, to be honest with you. I saw most of these after the fact on like DVD and stuff.
Okay.
So, but
yeah, again, in middle school, my buddy was like really into them, And I never watched him like because he was like I liked Highlander, but I could never like want to watch the show for some reason because I think it was USA and I just didn't respect anything that was on USA. Burn Notice aside, right? That was on USA.
It was, yeah,
right, yeah. So yeah, I think at that time their content was kind of questionable. So like, oh, a Highlander show on there? Nope, I'm gonna pass on that one. But like I said, and when I did watch the first couple episodes, it was very recent. This isn't like I did this years ago. Like I watched, and it wasn't bad. I just for whatever reason didn't continue because I think it's on. It might still be on Prime now. So if it is, I'll go back and check it out. But I think Highlander is such a special story, man. It's just and if you look at Connor McLeod's like his whole history, which it takes a couple movies to flesh out, even though those movies are not the best.
Yeah.
You get a lot of backstory and a lot of real depth to Connor McLeod. Like, even though he's like not a very deep guy because he's Christopher Lambert, but he just plays him so well. And he's just great. He has like some of the best dialogue too. That's the other thing I love about him. Like just his delivery of the dialogue.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I agree that, Christopher Lambert is, he makes that movie. I mean, the Kurgan and his chemistry with Sean Connery also go a really long way.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I would say that their chemistry sort of saves the middle part of 2. Like that's the best part of that movie is when those two are on screen together.
Wait. And anybody that's seen Highlander and hasn't seen Highlander 2 and you're wondering how Sean Connery is in Highlander 2, why don't you break it down for them,
It's a kind
Michael?
of magic.
Hey, you got a Queen reference in there. Good. I love it. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So what are we expecting in Highlander 2? And we're looking at the Renegade cut, right? We're going to stay away from the theatrical version.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, if you're going to watch Highlander 2, go with the Renegade cut. But even then, it's not great. They're no longer aliens, but there's something where they're both from the extreme past, but they can watch the future on television, I guess. It's such a bizarre storyline. But they're tied together in the past through the quickening, which I don't even know. Do they even call it the quickening anymore in the Renegade cut? I thought they took it out.
I don't remember. It's been a while since I've seen it.
But yeah, because of that, Ramirez says this one-off line about...
Wait, hold on. Before we go any further,
Yeah.
if you've made it this far and you're wondering what the fuck we're talking about, so basically, the Highlander, the titular character, Connor McLeod, is a Highlander from the Highlands of Scotland, right? Who finds out he's an immortal, basically. And he's a part of this thing that he doesn't know until he learns called the game, which is basically all the immortals in the world try to find each other and cut off each other's heads. So you can team up with people for a certain amount of time, but in the end, there can only be one, right? And at that point, when the last man stands and the other man's dead, it's called the quickening, where you achieve what's called the prize. I know it sounds ridiculous, but it's awesome. And the prize can be basically anything you want it to be. And this is where Highlander shoots itself in the foot, is at the end when the quickening happens and the prize is achieved going into the second one. And this is where retconning happens. So proceed, Michael.
God. Yeah, so the prize. Yeah, so apparently they're all
Which
from...
Connor's he had a great prize, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but then again, the second movie, when you really think about it, nothing makes sense. So in the second movie, they established that they're all from, again, some unknown point in the past where everything looks like a desert planet, but whatever. And they have like space guns and stuff. But there's some sort of rebellion led by Connor and Ramirez and some other people. General Katana is played by Michael Ironside. He's the bad guy. He is Kurgan 2.0. And they get captured, Connor and Ramirez, and they get exiled to the future. But they're told that when they're in the future, they will have to battle those that are like them until only one remains. And then that person can choose to live out their days and die as immortal in the future, or they can choose to come back to the past. Now, keep in mind, all of this nonsense is them retconning that they were all from an alien planet and then getting sent to Earth. So they had to change all that to this weird, they're from the past. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense at all.
But Connor is old in this version.
Right, because he got the prize from the first movie, but now General Katana is, again, he can watch the future happen. So he's watching, and he's just so irritated at McLeod that he sends two of his goons into the future to kill him, which makes him immortal again. And also an explosion makes him young.
Wait, that is the best part about it. They found a way around the recon. And that is the brilliant part of the Renegade version.
I mean, you're right. You are right.
It is, right? Yep. Think about it. Like, they really painted themselves into a corner and just found a way out of it with that very scene right there. And it's kind of like dumb luck that it happened, right?
Yeah.
But I guess it makes sense. It makes sense on a certain level, right?
Yeah. I mean, look, here's the thing I'll say. If you're not familiar with Highlander, and if you like cheesy sci-fi with sword fighting and women who drop their panties at the knowledge that someone's immortal, then Highlander is for you. That's one of the weirdest
you're leaving
things.
out a pivotal part, though.
Oh,
it's got heart, man. It's got a lot of heart to it.
It does. Well, the first one does.
Yes, it does. Yeah. Because for all you out there, like, for whatever anybody, if you try to break down Highlander, it sounds ridiculous. But at the heart of it is Connor McLeod, a man who's immortal, who has tried his whole life not to keep falling in love, but he's a man. You know, he falls in love, you know, but also at the same time, he is weighted down with this idea that there is a game that I'm a part of. And no matter how many times I try to leave the game, I have to be a part of it. And there has to be only one at the end. So whatever I do, I'm going to lose the people that I love, and I still have to play this game. And he's torn between that. So there's a lot of depth to it too, right? I mean,
yeah. Honestly, I know it might be blasphemous to say this, but I do think the movie could stand to be rebooted with a modern, I don't know, technology. I just think that my favorite parts of the original film are the flashback sequences and seeing all that stuff. And I don't feel like we get enough of it. I mean, I understand you can only do so much of it in an hour and a half to 2 hours, which is why I do think that the series, again, it's not Connor, it's not. And Duncan grows on you, but they have so much more time to explore his backstory. And to the show's credit, they do just a ton of flashbacks, some of them better quality than others. But you get to see Duncan throughout all these different times. And I feel like I would have liked to see more of that in the movie series, because that's like in 2, the only flashbacks you get are to like present day, like what was present day in like maybe like the first movie or shortly after the first movie. We don't get any of the great flashbacks. Everything's like dealing with the retcon stuff.
In what is it, 3 or maybe even 4, they have a bunch more Connor flashbacks.
In 4, they have some good ones with him and Duncan.
Yeah. So look, if you think about it, I mean, really, like, for whatever you say about the sequels, if you're a fan of Connor McLeod, watching those movies for the sole purpose of seeing those flashbacks and adding to his character depth, even though those flashbacks were to kind of create more of a bond between him and Duncan, like that shows these different points in his life, which is really great. Even like the was it the first or second episode of the series, like showing those points where, Connor has had to wrestle with the fact that like, I don't want to be in the game anymore. I just want to be a person and live my life. But I know that I'm going to live forever. So everybody's going to die. Like I can't get close to anybody. It's a tough life to live.
Yeah, that's true. But
So you just, here's the true thing about if you're immortal, just acquire a lot of antiques throughout the years and open an antique store and just hope nobody hunts you down.
yeah,
And you'll be
exactly.
fine.
Build your antique store on holy ground.
On holy ground. But also learn many forms of sword fighting, from the
Yes.
broadsword to the katana.
Yep, learn it all. Martial arts, everything.
Yes.
And you know what? Maybe carry a gun. I don't know.
Yeah, right.
I think I saw that in one of the shows, like one of the series episodes, where there was an immortal who would cheat, and he would use a gun and shoot the other immortal down and then cut their head off. And it's like, dude, that is so wrong. So
It's pretty smart though.
yeah,
You got to say, if you've been living 200 years, you're tired of that, man.
yeah.
I'm just going to take people out and I'm going to get as close to the prize as possible, right?
Dude, I'm telling you, there is some good stuff in the series. Even if you don't want to watch all of it, look up any episode with Hugh Fitzcairn, played by what's his name? Oh, why am I blanking on his name right now? He was part of the Who.
Roger Daltrey?
Yeah. Yes.
Really?
Yes. He plays Hugh Fitzcairn, who is the best part of the show, hands down. And him and Adrian Paul actually have great chemistry. So whenever he shows up, you're going to have a fun episode. But they do some interesting things. I'll stop going on about this. But there's one episode where there is a child immortal who was turned when he was like 12 or something like that, right? And it's very interesting because you think about just like being Connor living forever. But if you're trapped in the body of a 12-year-old and you're hundreds of years old, like just think of what that would do to you. And like the way that this character goes around killing other immortals is like super clever. And it's really interesting.
That sounds really interesting. That actually reminds me, have you ever seen Near Dark?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Yeah, there's a vampire, same way, like 12-year-old kid who uses he acts like he like fell off his bike or something to lure people in. So that's pretty neat. Okay, now that you said Roger Daltrey is in it and there's a young kid using his age to his advantage, I got to watch it now. All right.
Yeah,
I'm in.
It was really interesting. They had like a lot of musicians guest star on the show because I know Joan Jett is in a few episodes. She plays an immortal. Obviously Queen was heavily involved with the movies, providing the soundtrack, and then they reuse a couple of those songs in the series, but I don't think they had like full rights to it, so you don't see it too much. But yeah.
Well, like probably Who Wants to Live Forever?
Yes, that is pretty much the thing that gets used.
Yeah. All right. I'm definitely going to check it out. All right. We're pushing up on the end here. I got to ask you. So on here, I always ask, like, besides what we talked about, like, what's something that you recommend right now? And it could be anything. Like, what's the cat's pajamas for you? What's like the bee's knees? Something that you think everybody needs to know about that you're into right now?
Well, what I'm into right now is maybe not necessarily what everyone else would be into right now, but the reason that I've been into it is because I'm doing a show on it essentially. But I've really been in this like nostalgic place lately, and I don't know if it's just because I can't go outside or what, but I've been doing two things. I've got one project where I basically recap and review old episodes of Are You Afraid of the Dark from Nickelodeon from the 90s, the kids horror show. I've been having a lot of fun with that. I don't know that that's necessarily for anyone else unless you were a fan of it as a child, then maybe you'd enjoy going back and having a rewatch.
State your case. State your case for it.
State my case for it.
Yes.
If you're not a fan or never were, I don't have a case for you because it doesn't really hold up that well. But if you did watch it as a kid, I think going back with adult eyes is a lot of fun because one, you're looking at it differently than you did as a child, but you also might have memories of like, oh, this scared me so much as a kid, or hey, I remember this person, or one fun thing is actually seeing a lot of actors who were kids on the show who have grown up to go on and be in other things. You know what I mean? So I'm having a lot of fun with that. But also in the nostalgic front, that's probably a little more widespread, broader audience. Next month, I have the first video in my new series where I'm actually going to be recapping and reviewing Batman the Animated Series.
Oh, nice.
And that's been...
I saw that it was the actress who played Harley Quinn's birthday today.
Oh, really? Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, Mark Hamill gave her a shout out.
Yeah. Yeah, that series, man, that stuff still holds up today. Some of the best Batman source material you will find in any medium. I mean, it's so solid. If you haven't watched it in a while, I strongly recommend checking it out again.
All right, so we got Are You Afraid of the Dark? Are you able to stream that right now? Is that on any of the platforms?
It's so you can. I know you can purchase most of it on like Vudu. They have it like digitally. Alternatively, I believe most episodes are actually on YouTube.
Okay.
I have heard that some people, depending on where they are in the world, haven't been able to view certain things. That's Viacom being dicks, I guess. But I know that most of the episodes are there. If you go onto YouTube and just type in the name of an episode that you know, odds are you will find it and able to watch it in its entirety.
So let me ask you this. When you've burned through the whole series, is the next thing up like Hey Dude after that or Salute Your Shorts?
I mean, look, I did enjoy all that stuff, but for the actual series that I'm doing with it, the name of it is The Midnight Society. I will probably just move on to another kids horror show, maybe Goosebumps or something like that. I've also considered moving up to more adult type horror, maybe reviewing Tales from the Crypt, because I just recently watched a couple of episodes and I forgot how fun that show was.
So fun. And actually Demon Knight's really good too, the first movie.
Billy Zane is amazing in that movie.
So good. Jada Pinkett Smith. It's got an amazing soundtrack. And it's got what's his name? William Sadler, which is phenomenal. And actually William Sadler was on the show too. He played he was in one of the best episodes of the show too.
Which episode was he in?
I can't remember what it's called. I think it's the one where he was buried alive.
Ooh.
It's been so long since I've seen it, but he's really cool. It's you want to hear a funny story? So I used to work in production for a long time, and we were doing this shoot, and this was back when I was in Maryland. And you know how like some restaurants they have like all the like the famous people that have been there, and they have their autographs and everything like on their picture. So one of the pictures was the Crypt Keeper signed by John Cassier, and I was like, that's the guy who did the Crypt Keeper's voice, and the guy that I was working with, he was like, yeah, he's from Maryland, right? I was like, what? It's like. That's awesome. Like, that makes sense. Like, that's why he's on the wall here. Like, he was just hanging out. And this place was like a place where famous people wouldn't go. But sure enough, his autograph's up there. It was awesome. So that's a true like Maryland dude right there. Nice. Going to this like random ass joint. But so cool. Yeah, I highly recommend watch Tales from the Crypt again, because I think today it would still hold up. I just hope that it makes that leap to HBO, and I think the only thing holding it up right now is like music rights issues, because at that time it was such like the Wild West for music that they were just like using stuff without getting the proper clearances for it. So I think that might be the only thing that's holding it up from getting onto like HBO Max or whatever the platform is, because they have like pretty much every other HBO show that they've ever made, except for that and like a couple other shows.
Yeah, it's interesting too, is that I didn't know that show was originally aired on HBO. When I saw it for the first time, I saw the trimmed down reruns or whatever, the syndicated versions on
Yep.
Fox.
Yep.
And so when I went to watch it's an episode with, I think, Ed Begley Jr.,
Oh,
where
nice.
he's the salesperson, and there's like tits right
Yep.
in the start of this episode.
Yep.
And I was like, whoa, I didn't remember this. And my girlfriend was like, yeah, this was on HBO. And I was like, wait, what?
Yep. It was great. I mean, think about it. Like, it was a horror anthology coming off of, let's see, at the time, probably Creep Show.
Yeah.
Was like the next best thing, those movies. But this was actually a series of it, you know. It was a great show. I remember fondly as a kid watching on HBO, and you know, you weren't supposed to see some episodes, but it was great. All right, so I'm going to put all that in the show notes. I'm going to put Are You Afraid of the Dark? And the other one was Batman the Animated Series.
Cool.
And I'll just throw in there as an extra Tales from the Crypt as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
right.
I definitely think I'm going to do it once I've run the course with Are You Afraid of the Dark? Because, like I said, just seeing those couple, I watched like 2 episodes, and I was like, man, I forgot how much fun Tales from the Crypt is. So, yeah.
Total fun. All right, and you were talking about your podcast, though, Michael. Like, tell us about your podcast, because you got a YouTube channel. Tell us where to find you, but tell us what to expect. And then before you go, I want you, because I know you're filled with a lot of facts, because you got a little history thing on there. I want you to just rattle off some facts for me, but tell us about the show.
Okay, well, the main show is called the Jack of All Nerds Show, and that show is mainly a podcast, so for your listening pleasure, and you can find that on pretty much everywhere, iTunes, Stitcher, anything else with. I think we're even on Pandora as well. Like any place that podcasts are, you can find us there. On the YouTube channel, if you just search Jack of All Nerds Show on YouTube, we do have some live streams from the Jack of All Nerds Show that we live stream, but mostly that's just other content. My recap and review shows. We do a lot of movie reviews. I talked about Cinema Saga, which we just recently brought back. We've took a big long hiatus because of everything that's been going on, but we have a new episode coming out this month on the Scream franchise. And let's see. And then I also do history videos, fun history. Like, I don't make boring history videos. I love history, but my problem with like learning history in school was that just the teachers are so dry. They don't bring it out. So I have a character who's a bit of an idiot who presents real history, but through the lens of a moron. And that's so. And I should have a new episode of that coming out this month too, on the history of jack-o'-lanterns. So
Awesome. And on social media, how can we find you?
Yeah. So on Instagram, Twitter at Jack of All Nerds. I think on Facebook it's either Jack of All Nerds or Jack of All Nerds Show. But yeah, you can find it that way. Or you can go to our website, jackofallnerdshow.com. That has links to all of our social media from there.
And what about Twitter?
Twitter is at Jack of All Nerds as well.
All right, perfect. All right, so I'm going to put them all in the show notes. Now, before you go, I want to know, hit me with some fun facts from your history episodes.
Fun facts from history.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Well, I don't know if you knew, like, if most people know this, but I feel like if you're like a history podcast buff, you probably already know this information. But I recently did a 4-part episode on the history of the U.S. presidents, and it's not like super detailed on each president. There's like little bits of information for each president as I go through. And I learned that Theodore Roosevelt, once an assassin tried to kill him, shot him, but the bullet didn't fully penetrate. Like, it hit a bunch of stuff that he had. Like he had something metal in his vest, and so the bullet only penetrated his flesh a little bit. He was still bleeding, but he ignored going to get medical help until he did his like 90-minute speech or something. Like, he had some ridiculously long public speech that he had to give. And he was like, no, I'm doing this speech. And he did it. And then got medical help after that. Like, that
is manly.
Right? I was like,
yes.
I was like, why isn't there an action movie about this guy?
I know, right? Or at least a musical.
Right.
That reminds me of a story about Andrew Jackson, who, again, an assassination attempt. Guy came up to him, and this was like one of the top, what was it, like flintlocks at the time? Mm-hmm. One of the top flintlocks at the time. One of the most reliable pistols at the time. Pulls it on him, shoots, and misfires. Pulls an exact same version of that same flintlock pistol as a backup. Again, highly accurate with very few misfires. Pulls that on him. That one misfires as well. Andrew Jackson takes his cane, beats the guy over the head, walks away. Like, how tough is that, man?
Yeah.
You just, like, and think of the odds on that too. That's nuts.
Yeah, that's pretty baller, though.
Yeah, it's totally baller. All right, so everybody, you got to check out all the history episodes on the YouTube channel and get your little dose of history, cool stuff like that with Teddy Roosevelt. And Michael, I got to thank you so much for coming on. I love talking about all types of crazy movie nonsense and awesomeness with you, and hopefully people start picking apart movies more and finding the hilarity in them.
Yeah, man. Thank you
and
for
the love as well.
Thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun. If you ever need someone to, gush about Highlander again, I'm your man.
I always need somebody to gush about Highlander.
Did you know, just real quick about Highlander again, since you're such a fan, there's an anime movie that I own.
There?
It's, I can't even remember the name of it, but if you just look up, just Google Highlander anime and you'll find it. There was also the cartoon, which I never saw when it was on, but I know it existed.
I remember that.
And there was a video game that was supposed to come out years back on, like, I want to say like Xbox 360 era of games. And there was like production photos of this game and it never came out. And I was so disappointed, because how amazing would it be to play an Immortal and then get to like play out levels in like flashbacks? I mean, I guess it would kind of be like Assassin's Creed, but
yeah.
like, I just like to be an Immortal in a video game, cutting off heads of other Immortals. It would be so awesome. And I'm so sad that it never happened.
That would be, you'd have to do it like Assassin's Creed. That would be great though. I mean, if you could really add some depth to it, like some real story, like if you had like a guy like the guy who did Metal Gear Solid or something, where you like really add some like deep level story stuff to it, and then you could intermingle that action and stuff into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Man, I hope somebody that is a Highlander developer is listening to this and they're like, yeah, we should reboot that right now, because that was a cool idea. And now that we have better graphics and cooler systems, we could do it way better now.
Yeah. Look, if someone is out there, make that game. I will buy 2 copies of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And you don't even have to call it Highlander. Call it something else, but to sell it, just so people don't know it's Highlander, but just like hide the Highlander mythology in there or something. That would be cool, right?
Yes. Just make it happen. I'll buy a copy for Rick and I'll buy one for me and we'll play online together. I don't care.
Yes.
Let's do it.
Oh, dude, wouldn't that be awesome? Because the Immortals actually do team up for a while and stick together. Wouldn't that be cool if you could do online play where you could like team up for a while?
Yeah.
And then eventually you're going to have to turn on each other. And then you get to choose your actual prize. Like, what if that was like the thing? It's like, rather than the character wants a certain thing, like, it's like Fallout where you could actually choose your own fate.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Oh, whoa. That's too much, man.
If only we knew how to make video games.
I know, right? So anybody listening, we don't want to tell you how to do your job. Just do it. All right, Mike. Thanks again so much. I really appreciate it. And yes, definitely anything in the future, Highlander related, or if anything movie related, I'm your man. You're my man. I'm in all the way.
Awesome.
All right. Have a great night, man. Thank you.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening today. If you want more Can't Recommend Enough, you can check us out at Twitter at Always Recommend or on Instagram or Facebook at Can't Recommend Enough. Please feel free, follow us there, like stuff, go there for more recommendations, more cool stuff. Always be posting stuff and recommending all types of things. So check it out, follow, and if you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to subscribe and like the videos if you're listening to it on there. Also, subscribe to the podcast on the player that you're listening to, and that way you can get updated whenever a new show comes out. But you also, in the social media, get updates when new episodes drop as well. So check it out. Thank you so much. Truly appreciate it. Have a great day.